I may be wrong, but from all I hear, this is, to depart Tomahawk missiles into St. Petersburg and Moscow. It's just not acceptable, and they will react in one way or another. Doesn't mean we're in a nuclear war. 'Cause Israel has the same sort of attack of nuclear weapon. Few years' time. Well, that's not going to happen because Trump was told no. Here's the uncomfortable truth. They didn't want peace. They wanted a pause. Just enough to reload and restart the war later. A frozen conflict isn't diplomacy. It's a timeout with guns still on the table. But Russia didn't play along. And when round 2 needs consent from the other side, no ends the entire strategy. It was quite clear that he was starting to go down. He'd actually changed, and before the Budapest supposed summit, he was talking about a ceasefire on the frozen contract line. Even though Putin has told Whitfield, I'm sure he's told him, because this was the position that Putin took in June 24th at the Foreign Ministry, and he said laid out exactly what was online. They've been always absolutely clear. We will not accept it, and they will not accept it for very good reason. Because they've been they've been deceived by the West. Russia isn't rejecting peace. They're rejecting repeat betrayal. Minsk wasn't a peace deal. It was a stall tactic to buy time and rearm Ukraine. So when Western leaders say ceasefire, Moscow hears, give us a break so we can try again. Once trust is broken, ceasefire becomes just another trap. It's not they, it is the Russian people. When I was in St. Petersburg, a little time ago, I found, how the mood has changed. St. Petersburg. Petersburg is liberal capital of Russia. And I think more or less everyone accepts Russia has given blood to get to where they are now. They're soldiers, they're sons of blood, and they are not going to accept a new sort of compromise, a weak compromise. What that means is that some of this blood has been expended wastefully because they will have to spend it again in 2 or 3 years' time. And what is more, then they will have to spend even more after the Europeans have remilitarized Ukraine and put in more. Nationwide, the Ukraine in the aftermath. And they're not prepared to see that, the waste of blood like that. So most Russians accept it. Of course, there are debates about what is the right tactic on the ground. What is what is the best way? I mean, should Putin go all out and smash the energy system? Should he just attract them on the ground? Whatever. But that we're not really in a position to judge that. And that's a complicated, you have to be on the ground to be really able to judge, what is the best way forward. So yeah, there are valid discussions about what is the right way of bringing about an end to the war. Faster, slower, wider, narrower, all these things. This is normal. Nothing surprising about that. But that's where we are, waiting now for that war to. Here's the key insight for Russia. This isn't politics anymore. It's personal, it's blood. Once a nation pays that price, they don't settle halfway. They don't pause and retry later. The West sees strategy. Russians see sons, brothers, and graves. And when sacrifice becomes emotional, compromise becomes impossible. The former NATO Secretary General suggested, I think it was only yesterday, that NATO should start intercepting Russian missiles and planes in Ukrainian airspace. They should look towards sending more long-range weapons. So, different forms of escalation. Meanwhile, on the Russian side, we see that it seems, at least to me, that the patience of Putin has come to an end. Intercepting missiles in someone else's war, that's not defense, that's entry. And when one side loses patience, the next step isn't diplomacy, it's escalation. They realize that they have to restore their deterrent. And indeed, a lot of the posturing lately seems to, affirm this. So it just seems, this would be a very dangerous situation. Sorry. I think you're absolutely bright about how you're reading of the situation. The only thing I would add is that, I think when I mention the sort of Baltics of sort of locust, it's really because I mean they want it. They don't have the capacity to do a big operation to force, a provocation against Russia. That will immediately bring in America, because we in Europe don't have the forces for that. We don't have the money, and we don't have, if you like, the armory that is available for anything other than a skirmish with Russia. So what I think they're hoping to do is more or less have a sort of skirmish, either in the air or, I don't know, somewhere along that border, or at Odessa, which seems to be sort of, for the which Macron seems to be assessed. But something like that, in order to try, I think, because Europe is so desperate in its circumstances, economic circumstances, its political circumstances, that they really feel, the lead, as I say, to sort of wave the flag of Russophobia, because without the Ukraine, that was the sort of unifying thing, that the glue that kept the European Union together. When you're weak, you don't start a war, you start a provocation and hope someone stronger jumps in. Europe doesn't need victory. It needs a reason to stay together, and fear, not unity, has been the glue all along. If the Ukraine issue is no longer an issue, you'll find this country, Italy and France, and the Mediterranean countries changing, I think, quite strongly in wanting to have a relationship with Russia. Many of them, maybe not all of them, partly because they need it. I mean in terms of economics. They need resources and cheaper energy. So I think we'll be, and Germany's, is sort of pivoting very obviously with a significant sector, demanding a relationship with Russia, and demanding that they negotiate for direct pipeline gas to Germany to restore its business model, which is broken and which is getting worse and worse. The recession in Germany is getting incrementally worse. So I think we have to sort of aim more for the high turban and for the talk, and understand it as the sort of, of more of a sort of, cry of desperation that, we've got to find something to keep this program together. We bet so much in Ukraine, put so much money in, and then, to that end, made so many mistakes in our relationship with the United States, with China, economic mistakes that now Europe, we are in a terrible fix. And there isn't no way out. And I think Europe, which has, relied very much on this idea, and it comes from the war that that they can cry the need for Corden senator, so that only the center parties are allowed to win in Europe by saying, oh, no, I mean, you remember, Hitler came in this way, and we can't allow this to have. We've got to keep all the right out and extreme left out of this, and just have us in the middle of this. But young Europeans, don't remember at that end of the war. It's not something that's sort of at the front of their thinking anymore. Europe doesn't have a loyalty problem. It has a survival problem. Cheap energy beats ideology every single time. And when fear stops working, the narrative falls apart. And they are not, the Europeans talk about conscription. They talk about that here. Absolutely no wish to see, the young, cuffily. They come up in that way at all. I mean, you only have to look at Europe to see it's cuffily, not in the militant, frame of mind at all. So I think that, the Europe is trying to find some way of keeping itself together, of pulling all the pieces. But we should not, and I think this is a trouble that some in Russia do, I think take the worst interpretation, and they talk about, but Germany's massively rearming, starting NAMI. That's what they say do. Nearly 1.5 million for Iraq, or, these are figures we're miles away from what Europe can do. So I think, a little bit of this is possibly exaggerate, but nonetheless, I mean, we should take it with some concern, and to take it seriously, because they might still do something stupid and start a war with Russia. Europe talks like a superpower, but it fights like a committee. No troops, no weapons, no will. And that's the danger. Weak players make reckless moves, even if that isn't really their full intent, because they're not going to be able, they'll lose a war after they start one with Russia. But, they want to keep the narrative up. They want to keep the sphere up. And so, all these announcements, we may be at war this year. We may be at war immediately. Lake the attack. I mean, Operation Fear, different in this case, 'cause it's, Russia, but the virus is Russia, and the sort of the fear of it, and how we would all take precautions, is rather similar. We call that as into a call in UK that is called not politics, which is a polite way of saying docs. They don't need a real war. They just need fear of one, because fear keeps people obedient. Russia is coming replaces real solutions. No army, no resources, just panic as policy. And when fear stops working, the narrative ends.